Hi, welcome back to our tutorial on working with files. We're going to read in a string from a file. In the previous tutorial, we saw how to open a file using the initialization constructor. So I've got a file called data.txt here in the same directory. And this file has HELLO in it. And then, so as I formed this, right, I typed HELLO and I hit the enter key. Actually, there was another blank line. So hit the enter key. And so it has some trailing white space. If I save it, right, it has the characters HELLO and followed by that enter key press in it. Right. So it does have a string in it. And so I've created a variable, right, of type string, called it my string. We're going to open data.txt, right? We saw before we need to check to see if it fails. If it fails, we're going to leave. Otherwise, we're going to try to read in the file data. And we're using the extraction operator, right? If you've used cin before, right, this looks familiar. If we were going to read this from the keyboard, a string, we would say standard cin my string, right? And we know that then this will read information from the keyboard for us. Well, we can do the same thing with this operator, with this extraction operator. It's associated with this ifstream object. And we'll just tell it to read in something of type string stored in my string. And then what we're going to do is we're going to print the state flag. So I have this function up here where we were doing this in the previous video. We were just printing out the state of each one of these flags by calling this function. So what this function gets is it gets a reference to this input file stream object. So in file, when we call this function print state, I'm passing it in file up here, right? It's a reference to this ifstream object. This function refers to it as IFS. We're just going to print out the states of each one of these. And then we'll just close the file. All right. And I've already done that down here down below, but let's clear this out. If we were to build this file, we build it, no errors, we run the executable, and we see then, right, it says that our stream, our input file stream in file is in a good state. That returned a 1, that's true. The fail, the bad, the end of file all return false. That tells us we successfully read data and stored it in my string. And we could do something like if, right, in file dot good. Let's go ahead and print out what's in my string. So let's rebuild this. Let's rerun the executable. All right. So again, we're in the good state, and we can see that we stored the word hello in my string. All right. Trivial example, but we were able to read in one string from this. Now, what if we tried to read something in again down here? So I'm going to say in file, I'm just going to say, go ahead and write it over the contents of what's in my string. So read something else in. And let's go ahead and print the state information again, pass it in file. And we would expect this to fail because what happens is when we open the file, we get access then to the start of the file. I always think of this as though, right, there is a file buffer in there. There's a pointer internally with this object that is pointing to the very start of the file. So the very start of the file is the first line. Our first character is the letter H. And for string types, it knows it should look for any kind of data, right? It will then keep reading until it hits white space. So that white space then was that new line character. So there's only one string in here. This should fail. And so if we go back here, like I said, and I should save. I hit that. All right, let's rebuild. Let's rerun. All right, so everything was in a good state. We read in our hello, it started in hello, but then when we tried to read again on this line, notice good returned false, which is 0. fail returned 1, and then the end of file condition was is true as well too. And so what happens is when you create these text files, when you save them, there's actually an end of file marker added. We can't see the end of file marker here, but there is an end of file marker. So actually then 2 of these bits were set. The fail bit because in failed to read this my string, and also because the end of file marker was encountered. So sometimes then when we want to read in multiple items from a file, we can check to see, right, are we at the end of file? So we can adjust our code if we wanted to have some multiple strings in here. So hello, good, bye, hello, world, right. The end, I'll save that. Let's see what we read in and store in my string now. All right, so I'm going to change this and I'm going to say while in file dot good. Let's just go ahead and read this in. And well, we should probably print it out. So what? No, I don't want to print it out if this fails. So, well, I thought I copied that, but of course, I'm getting this weird thing where even though I hit copy or Control X, and I'm hitting Control V to paste, it's not pasting it in. So Control X, Control V, I don't know. All right. Let's go ahead and print the state here. Let's get rid of all of this. Right. Now, like I said, I don't really want to try to print this out if it's not good. So I could write this in some different ways. I could go ahead and actually, before we hit the while loop, I could try to read. And then check to see if this is in a good state. So we are just could go ahead and print the states and then print this out, what it successfully reads. And then what we should do again before we leave is try to read this again. So before we hit the while loop, we read in, try to store something in string, my string. We check the state. If it's good, we're going to go ahead and print out the state flags, right? We're going to print out what's in my string, and then we will also then try to read again. And this will loop back up and check the state. Now, when this fails, we will leave the loop. So at that point, let's go ahead and give this a little message that says, while loop ended, and let's print these states. And let's see, after we print my string, let's maybe just give this 2 new lines here. All right, let's clear this out. Let's rebuild. No errors, let's run it. All right, let's pull this up. All right, so as this ran, we successfully read in, then the first time, we successfully read in the word hello. We can see this was in a good state, right? We stored the word hello in my string. We then, when we tried to read here, right, we were able to read in goodbye. We loop back up here in file was still good, so it went ahead and printed out, right, the state here, and then printed out what it read and stored in my string. And then it tried to read again. And so to remind you what's in our file, what we have hello, we have goodbye, we have hello space world, the space end. Notice then the next thing this read in is just hello. So when you're trying to read strings from files, it will read until it encounters white space, right? A blank space, a new line character, a tab. And so if we expected to read both words, that does not happen with this extraction operator, right? In trying to read in a string, because strings are white space delimited when we use this. This is the way this operator works. There are other ways to read in multiple words. We'll take a look at that in another tutorial, but I just wanted to show you that behavior here. And notice then, right, it kept reading hello, world, the, and right, and then we get to our message while loop ended. Notice both the fail bit was set because it failed to read something in, and the end of flag or end of file was set. So another way we could do this is we could check and say, well, we're not at the end of file. So instead of saying, well, in file.good, we could say, well, not end of file. We could do that. If we do that, and this part fails to read because we have a wrong data type, we won't be detecting that, but with strings, we can't really have, quote, a wrong data type. By that, I mean, if we tell it to read something as a string, even if we have numbers here, it's going to treat those numbers as a string of characters. So if we do that, and let's stop printing the state every time through, let's just print what we see. When we leave, then we will print the final state. Yeah, I think I want to do that. Let's clear this. Let's run the executable. All right, well, we got those extra lines. So we get hello, goodbye, hello, world, the end, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so it skips over white space and it looks for this last string here, right? It treats that then as a string of characters, the characters 1, 2, 3, 4. And when this is all done, well, our loop ended because we said to keep reading as long as we weren't getting that end of file flag, but we got that end of file flag here. So that's one method for reading in strings. Right? Next tutorial, we'll take a look at what it takes to read in doubles. Then we can try ints, right, other data types, and then mixing data types. This should give you a first idea, right, of how to read data in with a file.